Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. In this video, I want to cover my Barbarian build. Now this build comes from running the Demon Web Pits dungeon. Barbarian can do fairly well there. Just a note, I am relatively new to playing a Barbarian, at least in serious endgame content. So this build and guide will serve more of a foundation for something you can build upon when min-maxing to endgame. It should help you out with what rotation you should be doing within single target and AoE, along with what kind of stats and how you want to set up your character in terms of priority. If you do want to see some pro level gameplay from a serious endgame player, I would recommend checking out Steamroller. He has quite a lot of gameplay videos there on his Barbarian, running Zemnid's Reliquary and multiple runs of the Demon Web Pits. But let's jump into my setup and my build. I'm going to cover lots of tips and tricks of how you can set it up for yourself. You don't exactly have to go for the gear what I have. A lot of it is currently unreachable for most players, so I'll most definitely cover alternatives that are much easier to obtain. So there'll be timestamps on the play bar below where you can skip to any section you're most interested in. So let's first jump to our power setup. We're going to cover single target first. For your at-wills, you want Relentless Slash, just to give you the 5% damage buff. Then you want Brash Strike for your primary at-will you'll use for the massive amount of damage. For your encounter powers, you want Bloodletter plus Indomitable Battle Strike, also known as IBS, and then Frenzy. For your daily powers, you want to be using Savage Advance. For class features, you want Trample of the Fallen and Steel Blitz. For your feats, you want Blood Spiller, Overpenetration, and Relentless Battle Rage. The other ones are more for AoE. Then we go to our AoE setup. Here you want Relentless Slash as your primary damage at will, Not So Fast, Mighty Leap, and Axe Storm. These two other AoE powers, situational, but usually deal a lot less damage compared to these other three. For your daily power, you want Avalanche of Steel, and class features mainly just stay the same. Usually you'll hope for at least one person in your team who's going to have some other control powers, and you'll gain that damage effect against them. You could of course run Bravery if you are doing a strategy of just racing through the dungeon to the end or something, and then killing everybody once you're grouped up. For your feats, you want that Mightier Leap, you want the Overpenetration, and you want the Steel Slam plus the Relentless Battle Rage. That'll give you the best feats to go with those powers to deal lots of damage. Now let's go to our mechanics. As a Barbarian, we have the Shift ability, which is going to give us control immunity. It'll give us a ton of movement speed while we're at it, and you can basically shift around like that, avoiding enemies' attacks by immunity framing them. Very nice, and it'll give you a ton of survivability and movement speed to get out of red zones, to get away from enemies, or to just immunity frame damaging hits. With your Battle Rage, you will generate this over time while in combat, while attacking. However, using encounter powers will give you a massive amount of that Battle Rage. Once it gets over 50% there, or 50 out of 100, you can press that tab ability, your Battle Rage, activate it, and you will receive a damage buff. As per this feat, it will be just 14%, but it's worth it. And also a survivability boost of reducing the damage you take by 15%. So you will use encounter powers to get rage, go in rage, and you will then also attack really fast with your at-wills. Keep in mind also that when you do enter Battle Rage, you will obtain 10% critical severity. Take note of this when building your character and prioritizing your stats. Now another mechanic which the game doesn't really explain to you is Annimation Cancelling. You can use your Shift ability to immediately interrupt any power you were going to go ahead and do. So let's say I'm going to cast Frenzy. I go ahead and do so, I can immediately cancel that. And instead of doing it, I am shifting. This allows you to immediately react to an enemy's hits and avoid damage. But you can abuse that to cut down on the cast time of certain powers. In particular, the most useful one is Relentless Slash. So on PC, the way you can do it is hold down your A and D key at the same time. Note you don't go anywhere. You can do the same with W and S, but when you press Shift, which is our sprint ability. While holding down those keys, you will enter that immunity frame ability. You will activate it. You can see the camera zooms out a little bit. That signifies I'm sprinting. I gain the control immunity and I gain the interrupt effect. So when you're casting, for example, Relentless Slash, you can just cast it really quickly and then animation cancel it. That way you can gain battle rage much quicker. So what you can do is you just hold down Relentless Slash, and when holding like A and D or W and S, you press shift and that will cancel it, causing you to be able to attack much faster. Just be careful when animation cancelling that you don't just completely cancel the power. If I want to animation cancel IBS, I'm going to have to let a certain amount of the animation go through before I cancel the animation so that it actually does the damage hit, and then I can move on to using a different power rather than fully finishing the animation, which would just end up taking longer when you've already dealt the damage to the target. So now let's go to our rotation. Let's go into single target first. As per the artifact section, you should have a debuff artifact which increases the damage against the target. Everybody in your team should have that too. Initially, make sure you have combat advantage against your enemy, making sure that arc is purple. Then before the artifact call begins, you want to make sure you have cast your encounter powers to fill your rage meter, and potentially using some animation cancelling with your Relentless Slash to make sure the rage is pretty much full. Then you will cast your artifact, our Dragon Fire here, then we go into battle rage, some at wills here, then we use our daily power, and then our encounters and our mount power. And that is pretty much it for the artifact call. After that, your animation cancelling Relentless Slash to get some rage. When encounters are off cooldown, you use Bloodletter and IBS, and then you're going into rage and use Frenzy from rage, and then you can see you can just attack here, and as soon as rage is over, you're using your IBS and Bloodletter again, going back into rage, and then using Frenzy while within that rage, and then once rage is over, animation cancel Relentless Slash a bit, and then back to the encounters, and that's about it. Ideally you'll have a healer which will keep you healed up. They might be a bit triggered that you keep damaging yourself with Blood Spiller, and if the content is particularly hard, maybe you want to switch off from Blood Spiller and go to Indomitable Rage. It will overall net you a good bit less damage, but it can be worth it if you're just going to end up killing yourself with Bloodletter. So then we go to our AoE rotation. So when you're fighting groups of enemies, you want to make sure to cast Mighty Leap on nothing. Then it gets the dotted outline. Then you'll initiate with Mighty Leap, then Not So Fast, and then you'll use your Relentless Slash here and Axe Storm on the enemies. And yeah, everything should die pretty fast then, and it's back to just using your encounter powers off cooldown. So again, make sure to cast before you go into your ad group Mighty Leap without hitting anything, so it gets a dotted outline. So you proc this feat, which gives it 600 magnitude. You would then initiate the fight with that, Not So Fast, Axe Storm, and yeah, you just rage as soon as you have it and just Relentless Slash everything until it's, yeah, dead or encounter powers are off cooldown. You'll use them again. If you do have your daily power, again, you can start with Mighty Leap, go Avalanche, and then you can also, as soon as you land down here, like use your mount power. You can also use it beforehand, like the Vortex, to group up enemies. And that Avalanche of Steel, not the best AoE power, but you don't really have anything better. It will also put like an area on the ground which will deal damage over time as well. Particularly useful if the enemies are tanky. You don't have exactly the fastest AoE, your powers aren't that hard hitting, and then a lot of the damage will come from Relentless Slash during Rage, where you can cast it really fast. So we move to our stats. What you want to be focusing on as a Barbarian DPS? Well, you want these 5 main damage stats along with as much item level as possible. Now the priority is initially power, combat advantage, then crit severity. You can get to just 80% and leave it at that until you really want to min-max, because you will gain 10% crit severity when you go into rage. So you can just leave it at 80 and get it to 90% max with that. And lastly, accuracy. However, you want to consider bonuses that are going to give you damage. If a bonus is going to give you damage of like 5% versus something that you would use to gain like 5% stats, you want to take the damage bonus in most cases over it. Keep in mind, additionally, we are trying to get our power and accuracy to green. When it's green, it's maxed out and it's considered capped. And this means we gain the 5% damage boost from over penetration. So we are just choosing gear pieces, taking companion bonuses, and everything that will combine together to give us these stats, these percentages, and when we go in combat, they'll all get boosted higher. You should see that you get your power to 90% in a raptor group, your combat advantage also to 90% with a tutor, and your crit strike at 88%. You can leave it at that because when you run with a paladin, they'll give you 2%. Alternatively, we would run with the alchemist instead of the golden cat, and we'd run with the spider totem from the North Dark Reaches in order to give us another 2.5% combat advantage to make up for that. And that way, crit strike would be 90%, with then crit severity already at 90%. Again, you could leave crit severity at 80% and just make use of the 10% from Battle Rage. So let's cover gear, what you want to be using and what alternatives are there to the current build I have. Well, we start with the headpiece. This is coming from Master Demon Web Pits, and an alternative is the Serene Hood from Dragon Hunts. They have the same bonus there. Alternatively, Avernus Hunts with the Gristro Horns have the same bonus as well. Our armor piece comes with the Bregan gear from the Menza Baranzan store. You can purchase it and then upgrade it with the Demon Web Pits so it's on Mythic. And now it will give you a whopping 18% combat advantage, and all you have to do is hit your enemy. Very easy to maintain. It will reduce your critical avoidance by a little bit, but you can generally take that negative and still be able to survive in all content. Alternative to this would be the Mighty Kuras again from Dragon Hunts. The arms, we have the Mighty Vambracers coming from Dragon Hunts. Alternative to this would be the Spiked Defender Vambraces coming from, I believe, Juma. And I can't exactly remember where the other source was. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Weapons, we have the perfect weapons. Now, these will be something you want to work towards obtaining. As stepping stone weapons before you get these, I recommend just getting the Stormforged weapons. You can look up my video from North Dark Reaches. You will progress along this path, first getting Blaspheme weapons, then getting Stormforged. These perfect ones come from the Demon Web Pits, and they'll give you a whole bunch of stats along with massive amount of item level and some base damage. When you're still working towards getting these weapons, you probably won't have the rings either, and we'll switch the rings to like the Master Temple of Spider rings or the Dragon Hunt rings, and we'll discuss that in a second. But we go to boots, and these come from, again, the Demon Web Pits Master. Alternative to these is the Wasteland Wanderers from Hardcore Boss Mini Boss Farm. Alternative than that, yes, you could use the Bregan ones with the extra power. You can upgrade that again to the enchanted ones, giving 6% power. Just if you're in a group with raptors, you won't really need that power, but it'll work when you're still upgrading your character. For our neck, waist, and artifact set, we have the Marilith set. This makes our enemy who we attack cause them to take increased damage up to a maximum of 5%. It is really good for that, to give you the damage boost and everybody else who attacks that enemy. The alternative to that, if somebody is already running the Marilith set, is the Demon Lord set from Master Demogorgon. That'll also give you 5% damage, but only for yourself. The rings, these again come from the Demon Web Pits. We've got the 5% accuracy one there and the 8% to at-will damage. Alternative to these is, of course, your Xemnid's Reliquary rings, your Repulsion and your Lothian Arrogance. If you use Repulsion and Arrogance, that can net you the maximum amount of damage against bosses. When you look at it mathematically, you can see that it's nearly a 4% increase from using Arrogance and Repulsion. You've got to make use of the combat advantage from Arrogance and switch it over to gaining accuracy, 6%. It's relatively hard to build around, but possible with the Mighty Kuras instead of the enchanted one. but very simply you can just go with these. They also have a set bonus where you gain 2.5% extra damage, and they do have higher item level. When you're still working to upgrade your Barbarian, use first of all the Illustre's Beauty and Illustre's Obligation from the Master Temple of the Spider. And before that, you're using like the Soothsayer's Ring and the Wayseeker's Ring from Dragon Hunts. For our shirt and pants, we just have these from the Heroic Encounters within the Demon Web Pit zone, Narbondelin. And of course, if you're against Drow, make sure to run the Drow shirt. That's a whopping 8% extra damage. So now we quickly move to the modifications, the armor kits and jewels. We have a crit strike here, crit severity, power, and then on the boots, accuracy. Our neck, waist, and rings all have combat advantage jewels. Then we go to our enchantments, and this is the setup we have. We have 3 garnets and 1 amethyst. However, I would highly recommend having a cobalt on hand to switch it out instead of power if somebody in the party runs runic aura. That will give you the exact same amount of power as a garnet would. For your defensive ones, it doesn't really matter, but to optimize, you would have, all garnets. And utility, you would have forte. Overloads, we currently have Rage of Flames, good for all content, but you may very well want to have like the Drow Slayer ones here, or Spider Slayer, or even Demon Slayer, and you can get ones from the Stronghold with 10% Slayer ones as well. And the second one, I would go with Crit Strike and Accuracy. Combat enchantment, absolutely Lightning Flash, bonus, recharge speed. So we move to our artifacts, and here I would have a primary artifact that supports your team. So this would be a list where you would take like the top 11 as kind of the best to support that team. So I would highly recommend you have at least a few of those so you can adapt to what your team needs. But otherwise, as secondary, you would want to have these high item level ones of 1500. The Wand of Domination from Xemnit's Reliquary or the Auction House, Mystic Bolt from the Demon Web Pits campaign. Complete these boon points, you'll be able to obtain it. And then the Marilith Mask from the new dungeon. They've got some decent stats and the most item level of artifacts in the game. So we go to race and ability scores. This build is using the Wood Elf. The reason is it gives us that bonus critical strike. Fits best in this build. You can alternatively have different races. You may have to rejig some of the stats. For our ability scores, we've gone full strength and full charisma. Just make sure if you're still leveling up your character and don't have your crit severity at least at 80%, then take dexterity instead of charisma. So now we move to our companions. And this is our current setup. For AoE, I like to use the Minotaur instead. And for single target, you can use the Pseudo Dragon. You could use even just the Batiri, or you could use the Green Scale Bowman. For our equipment, ideally we get this upgraded. Currently it's giving us accuracy and crit severity. The upgrade from here is to do your North Dark Reaches, get enough currency, and you can buy better stuff right here. It has 200 more item level. For our bonuses here, we have Perfect Vision, but I would recommend using one that supports your team instead when running party content. Then we have the Neverwinter Knight, the Tamed Raptor, Minsk, the Batiri, and the Golden Cat. However, you can very readily use the Alchemist here instead when you manage to get the Spider Totem from the North Dark Reaches. When fighting groups of enemies, I would highly recommend having the Phase Spider here, and instead of the Batiri, the Black Dragon Ion Stone or Gromp from the current Battle Pass right here. Then we move to our mounts, and in our current tab we are using Bigby's Hand for our single target power, and in most cases we're using the Vortex from the legendary Flying Carpet for our AoE power. Here we have Mystic Aura, but I would recommend switching to Ferocity if somebody else in your team can run this, like a healer or a tank. In our stable, we have this setup. These insignia bonuses, most importantly Artificer's Persuasion, then you have Menders and Executioner's Covenant, and then Protector's Camaraderie and Warlord Inspiration. Now these mounts, you do not have to have the exact ones I have, but you will eventually want 4-slot mounts. As soon as there's a 4-slot mount with Artificer's Persuasion, we'd ideally get that. For the insignias themselves, we have a bunch of brutality, skill, more brutality, some dominance, more skill, brutality, dominance, same here and same here. For the collars, you want to go encounter power damage and recharge speed. However, again, if you don't get your crit severity to 90%, you could have the crit severity collar here instead. Otherwise, I would just go with rough astral diamonds, stamina regen, and movement speed. So now we move to our boons, and here you want to pick up all the offensive ones, these two columns here, the movement speed, the damage against fiends, demons basically, and cultists, in particular for the latest content, the demon web pits. Tier 5, you want like forte, and then also quick turnabout with recharge speed. However, if you get that crit severity to where you want it, you could switch the forte over to action point gain. And the master boon, you just want bloodlust. Guild stronghold, we have power here, defense, and revive sickness. So then lastly, for the consumables we use, well, we have squash soup, flask of potencies, sunlord's gift elixir, and ratatouille. We use an invocation blessing to primarily just get extra crit strike, this icon right here. For the belt items, ideally we have a stone of health, the dragon fire, and we're currently using a belt as a stand-in instead of, let's say, the spider totem from the North Dark Reaches. Alternatively, you could use the Forger's Box, but you really don't need the power. So that is the entirety of my build guide. Hopefully it's been somewhat insightful to you guys as to the basics on how to play a barbarian damage dealer in single target and AoE, and then also how you want to gear it up. So a massive thank you again to all these channel members for their added support. You can support me for as little as €1 a month by clicking the join button down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.